Okay then, it's Team of the Week time. Team of the Week for Week 7 of the Overwatch League. And this week has seen a return to normality, some more normal results that we'd expect out of these teams considering their power levels and such like that. Whereas last week, we saw some very erroneous stuff. So this week, we're expecting some things to get back to normal. However, we are seeing a few different people come to light because some people are finally stepping up to the plate, which they didn't really do last month, or we haven't seen them do recently anyway. So, let's get into our Team of the Week for Week 7. And again, we always start off with the supports. For some reason this week, I think I'm starting off with the flex support, which is odd because I usually start off with main support, I think. But, you know, it is what it is. I'm just an idiot at the end of the day. That's how we do this. Flex support then. Flex support was quite stacked this week. A lot of people have put on some really good performances. Actually, a lot of people have put on some actual MVP performances in matches, which is really, really good to see, and Flex Support is always a really stacked role. On my shortlist for this week for Flex Support, I have put Iris on the shortlist because Iris had a really, really good week for Atlanta Reign. Atlanta Reign, yeah, they lost to the Gladiators 3-1, but Iris actually did pretty well in that match, and it's testament to him, and he had a great match against the Vancouver Titans as well. Really, really good on that Batiste, especially, and it's nice to see them popping off. Like, it's nice to see Atlanta Reign doing well because they have a lot of potential in that team, and it's nice to finally see a little bit of it realized. Although they did go up against the Gladiators and fall down slightly, they did give a good display in that match. Then we saw Crimzo for the Houston Outlaws. Crimzo again continues his rise this season. Like, I was a Crimzo doubter at the start of this season. I'm not anymore. He's really proved his worth in the Overwatch League and at the very top of it as well. In that flex support role, Batiste really is suiting him right now, and his Ana is fantastic as well. He's done really, really well this weekend, and Houston Outlaws getting the 3-1 over Toronto, getting the 3-0 over London. Crimzo clearly looked like the best flex support around in those games. So he was really standing out. Molly actually got MVP for the Shanghai Dragons against Los Angeles Valiant. We don't see Molly all that often because, you know, most of the time for Shanghai we see Izayaki because he's their starting flex support. But nice to see Molly every now and then, and Molly really did do well against the Valiant. Although it is against the Valiant, we have to take that into account at times because, you know, Valiant are valiant and Valiant are bad. Anyway, I am going to put in this role, though, Violet of the San Francisco Shock. Why have I put Violet in this role? Because Violet, he's not only fantastic. I know that sounds stupid, but he's not only fantastic in the role he's in. He's a cracked Ana, cracked Zen, cracked Bap. There's no arguments towards that. What also have we seen Violet do this weekend? Also flex to the main support role, play Lucio, play Mercy, and play Brick. I think we've also seen the Violet Moira. Yeah, we have seen the Violet Moira as well. Actually, in fact, he was getting fantastic value on Moira out of his coalescences. So, Violet can literally play any support you ask him to. This player is honestly crazy. Honestly crazy. And he's definitely the best all-around support in the league, in my opinion. Is he the best specialist flex support? Possibly. That's a debatable one. But all-around support, he is the best in the league. And looks great on whatever he plays, and this weekend he's demonstrated that to full effect, and San Francisco Shock have been reaping the reward, because, you know, they've not only got the victory over Toronto Defiant, which you would expect of them, but they've also got the victory over Dallas Fuel, and that's exactly what they were looking for this weekend, let's be honest. Main support is a little bit of a weird one, because main support, yeah, we've seen some very consistent main supports this weekend, even Anson J for Toronto, and they haven't really, you know, got the best of results. Liege Gons looked great for Shanghai Dragons. Again, we've seen plenty of great main support play. Like, even Violet, you can say it's great main support play because you've been playing some of the main support. FD God was actually fairly okay this weekend. Moth did okay for the Gladiators. You've got, you know, just all around a really good main support play. But I'm actually going to give this to someone who doesn't always get a massive amount of playtime, but did get the MVP award for one of the matches, and did also feature in the other match, and whenever I've seen them this weekend, they have looked great. This, to my surprise, is Skewed. So Skewed is with the Gladiators, obviously. Skewed was seen as the backup to Moth, obviously, and to fill the gaps that Moth kind of vacates. Brig. But And Skewed, I got there in the end. Skewed got the MVP award against Vancouver Titans. He put on a fantastic display against that team. Yes, it's the Vancouver Titans. Take it with a pinch of salt. Weird Vancouver Titans with Changsik on main tank playing from Korea. I know. But he still did very, very, very well. And then when he came in at times against the Atlanta Reign for Moth, he was still looking great. He was still looking fantastic. And what impresses me about this player, is that he's not looking out of his depth. He's not looking out of his depth. And that's what I worried about with Skewed coming into this season. And these players that have been picked up from Mosaic Gaming, this is where Skewed came from, have really actually done quite well, because we see echoes of it in New York Excelsior as well. And it's really nice to see them doing well. Skewed really impressed me this weekend and looks great for the future, actually, of the Gladiators. Moth is not, a spring chicken, should we say? He's not young anymore. So with him being able to learn off of Moth, that's great. And I think that's going to be brilliant for the Gladiators long term. So then we move on to our tanks. The tanks are fairly easy for me to comprehend. Like, Fearless didn't have a great weekend for Dallas Fuel. He had a good weekend, he didn't have a great weekend. He started to get a little bit caught out against San Francisco Shock. We saw a decent weekend from Yakpung. We didn't see a great weekend from Gesture at Seoul Dynasty because he was forcing too much hog. It looked a bit weird. I don't know why I brought Stand 1 up. I was about to talk about Shanghai Dragons, so I was about to talk about Fate. Fate has had a good weekend, but nothing too outstanding, I wouldn't say. Django and Dreamer at Houston Outlaws, again, have been really good. Muse has had his up and downs. That's kind of how Muse is going at the moment. 1 minute he's high, 1 minute he's low. It's kind of rough. Sadew's been consistent, but not great results. Gator was okay, but again, not too consistent, I would say. However, I have been very impressed with how Smurf has stepped up this weekend. I had a lot of worries last month about Smurf. He did not look like his 2020-2019 self. He did not look like the dominant main tank we'd seen in the league in the previous few years. He looked like he was falling off. And this was a worry for the San Francisco Shock going into this month, where Smurf would be crucial to their success, because we're going into a meta that heavily features Orisa and Winston, which is exactly what Smurf is at the San Francisco Shock for. If we're going into a meta that doesn't feature a main tank, say a Hog, that's going to be super. If it's going to be Reinhardt, it's going to be super, like we saw last month, although we did see super on some of the Winston. However, Smurf has come in this week, he has done very well, went toe-to-toe with Fearless, did not get outplayed, in fact did very well himself, did very well against Sado as well. To be honest, Smurf has been against two very good main tanks this weekend. When you think of Sado and Fearless, that's two very good main tanks. And he was doing very, very well on both Orisa and Winston. Whatever he needed to play, he was great. Smurf is my main tank for this weekend. I think he stands out more than anyone else. And it's nice to see him getting back to the top of his game. It really, really is. But who am I going to partner Smurf with on the off-tank? The off-tank is going to be Void. Because Void ascended this weekend. I don't think there's any other way to put it. He just ascended this weekend. Off-tank play has been okay, like Hanbin, Space, we've seen obviously Bianca, we saw Marvel on off-tank for Seoul, that's a thing, I guess. That's a thing. Again, Piggy looking okay. Nothing outstanding though, like Michelle, then Hawk. There's nothing been, again, it's not been completely stellar. Choi Hoban's had good moments, not gonna lie. I've seen some great setups from Choi Hoban to really get value out of his DPS players that have been alongside him, so that's just Choi Hoban things though, isn't it? But Void, especially for his performance against Seoul Dynasty, he was insane. He was getting value where he really shouldn't have been getting value. Yes, I'm talking about them remakes. Holy lord, he got a 3k with a remake. I think it was on Creative, Animo, and Fitz, I think. And that just doesn't happen at the Overwatch League level. Whether that's Seoul Dynasty being Pepega, or whether that's Shanghai just being otherworldly, he was doing this very often. Getting value out of his remix, great healing, good bombs. Overall, his off-tank play, especially on D.Va, has been fantastic this weekend. Shanghai have, again, the proof. 3-0 against the Valiant, 3-1 against the Seoul Dynasty. Void, in my opinion, clearly the best off-tank we've seen this weekend. Again, another person kind of returning to 2020 levels, because Void, again, has just been that slight bit below the top off-tanks in the league this season so far. But now, he's starting to claw it back a bit. And that's what we want to see. He's starting to claw it back, starting to get that title back. And that's what we want to see from these teams, is they're going to start being consistent. Shock, Shanghai, these really crucial players to their success, starting to really step up and starting to do what they need to do to get these teams where they want to be. And it's been a very big weekend for demonstrating that sort of thing. So yeah, Void is going to be my off-tank, but that leads us on to our DPS. DPS is an interesting one because we're going to hop over to the Houston Outlaws for our flex DPS, because I'm going to give it to Dante. Dante, this man's Echo. This man's Echo is something else. Like, we have seen a lot of Echo players pop up this weekend. Kevster, Pelican, we've seen so many, right? Sparkle, I want to give an honorable mention. Not necessarily for Echo. Sparkle's Echo is okay, but it doesn't get a massive value. But holy mother of God, his Genji against London Spitfire ripped that team apart. Like, it's not even funny. They've got families. Sparkle, please. And Sparkle did have a decent display against the San Francisco Shock, but a lot of time was outdone by Nero. Nero, again, stepping up for the Shock. Nero is a great Western flex DPS player. We don't see many top tier Western flex DPS players, right? We've got Kevster, but he's another name that you really put out about. But when you go to Korea, you see the people like Sparkle and Pelican, people like this, and Prophet. You know, we can't forget Prophet, the ultimate flex player with Rascal and people like that. Korea is well known for it. And then we come to the Western, and Nero is kind of one of the top players. And Nero has a lot of potential. And he's really starting to realize that at the San Francisco Shock. And that's really, really nice to see. And we just need to see him continue his development of the Shock under Krusty. And I think that will continue to happen, but he's not going to quite get it this week because of Dante. Dante, he is excelling now at the Houston Outlaws. With this really good team around him, Dante's just able to get the resources, the space he's needed, that he's needed all along, let's be honest, at the teams he's at. Like, he's got a great tank line now, he's got a great support line as well. So they're just allowing him to get work done, and his Echo has just been utterly nasty this weekend. Utterly nasty this weekend. Amongst really good Echo play, he's right up there. So Dante's on another planet at the moment, and I think he's really deserving of this role. But to be honest, that's not even the most difficult decision, because Hitscan role is even worse. Hitscan, this could go to so many different people. Kai had a really good weekend for Atlanta Reign. Really stuck well with Birdring in the Gladiators match. I was really impressed by that, but again, he was also good against the Vancouver Titans, but wasn't quite the best, in my opinion, of what we'd seen. Birdring, again, I've just mentioned him. Birdring stepping up for the Gladiators, really getting work done with the Gladiators really popping off this weekend again. Glister we saw came in for the San Francisco Shock, probably had his best time at the San Francisco Shock so far. Especially the Dorado map against Dallas Fuel. Glister really, really stood out. But he didn't have the best of times against Toronto Defiant, in my opinion. Glister was a little bit diffed by a certain player that I would like to bring up, and that's Aspire. Aspire clearly came into the league with a point to prove. 30-day contract after the COVID issues at Toronto Defiant, and my goodness me, he popped off. He was doing great work for the Toronto Defiant, even though they lost both matches. However, this would have been a week where you would have expected Toronto Defiant to lose both matches anyway, even if they'd had their full team. You have to take that into account. And the only issue I had with Aspire is that he played a lot of McCree. A lot of McCree. And we're not seeing all McCree at the moment. And we've seen a lot of Reaper Echo. And so it did get value, and it may have got more value than expected because he was running the McCree much more than other teams would have expected. And it produced a little bit of an erroneous sort of atmosphere because Toronto Defiant, this was unexpected. So teams wouldn't have known how to deal with it. And plus, it would have mucked up some teams' preparation going into the Toronto Defiant matches. But I wanted to mention Aspire because he did very well. Happy, again, He's not quite hit the heights of the main melee, but Happy is still having a fantastic time at the Houston Outlaws. He's hitting heights that he didn't hit at the Guangzhou Charge in previous seasons. His Hanzo's nutty. Happy's just nutty all around, to be quite honest. And he's really providing a stable footing for the DPS of the Houston Outlaws. When you pair Dante and Happy together, like, that's gonna rival the best. It really, really is. And it's been demonstrating that this weekend. But I am going to give it to Striker. And the reason I'm going to give it to Striker is because the Shock look more consistent when Striker's in over Glister this weekend, not going to lie. And to be honest, I think the Shock only ever bring in Glister to play Widow. And I don't think whether that's that effective anymore. In all honesty, I think they should just stick to Striker and have Striker play Widow if needed. I don't know quite why they don't do that. Just have Striker grind a little bit of Widow, because I'm sure his Widow's not that bad, but his Ashe is really good. His Reaper has been fantastic this weekend, incorporated with Nero's Echo. Also, Striker's McCree is great. So, yeah. Shock have looked more consistent with Striker in the lineup compared to when Glister was in the lineup. And the map that the Shock lost against the Defiant was Junkertown. That was where Glister heavily featured on the Widowmaker. So I think when they play Glister, they heavily limit themselves, and that's why I didn't give Glister this either. He popped off against Dallas Fuel, but not for long, because he's just subbed in for these random Widow maps that Widow can get, be played on. Striker has been incredibly consistent on a wide range of differing heroes. Striker is still one of the best hit scan DPS players in this league. And he's, again, another one of these Shock players to step up to the plate. To step up and say, no, the main melee was not good. We are not going to take this lying down. This is not what the Shock are about. It's time to bounce back. And that's what we want to see from these Shock players. The bounce back. The grit, the determination. This is what we know from the San Francisco Shock, and that's why they are two-time champions. It's as simple as that. And if they want to be a three-peat, that's what they got to do again, with a slightly different looking roster, with no Moss. And these players are stepping up to the plate, especially this weekend. To get the revenge over Dallas Fuel is a big moment for San Francisco Shock, because, let's be honest, it was a fairly close match, right? A lot of the maps were close. But if they'd have gone in Dallas Fuel's favour, where would we be looking for the Shock? For the first time in a very long time, we would have been looking at the Shock being a fairly, not fairly weak, but a much more weaker team than we would expect. And that's an odd look. And the Shock don't want that. Krusty doesn't want that. The players don't want that. Let's be honest. And Shock have proved them wrong this weekend. They said no. And they've bounced back against Dallas Fuel. And this back and forth between Shock and Dallas, I really want to see it. Because I think that it's going to be a rivalry for the ages. When you think of the Shock versus Titans rivalry back 2 years ago now, Runaway versus Shock, whatever you want to call it, I think this Fuel Shock rivalry has potential to have even more spice in it. And let's be honest, we want to see spice. But my team of the week for this week is Violet, Skewed, Smurfs, Void, Dante, and Striker. I think that's pretty lethal if you ask me. A lot of honorable mentions in this as well. We will be moving on to week 8, where we will see the knockouts begin for the June Joust as well. Some teams already eliminated, cough, 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 London. Some teams have already made it, like Atlanta and Houston. And yeah, it's going to be super interesting. A lot of dive around, a lot of Arisa around. And we'll see if Dallas can be two-time champions of 2021. It's going to be super interesting. But I'm going to leave it here for this one. All of the socials are linked in the video description as ever for Elysian Gaming and myself. Make sure to give the Twitters a follow, make sure to give the Twitch a follow, and the Discords, make sure to join them to have a good discussion with us all. But thank you guys so much for this video. If you'd like to give a like, subscribe if you're new, and I'll see you in the next video. See you then.